The Grand Hall of Silence. The Grand Galactic Hall was not a place for the weak. It was a place of power, of judgment, and of secrets hidden for centuries. The floor was made of black crystal that shone like water. The ceiling reached high with banners from 1,000 alien worlds, and strange glowing lights floated in the air like silent stars. Every corner of the hall was filled with nobles and warriors from across the galaxy, their eyes sharp, their voices low, their pride heavy. At the center stood the Queen of the Solari, her golden robes flowing like fire, her crown alive with silver light. Beside her sat the princess, young yet strong, with eyes that carried both fear and fire. They waited, the whole hall waited for the one who was about to enter. Heavy doors opened with a deep sound. Guards with tall spears stepped forward, and between them walked a human. His hands were chained, his steps slow, but his head was high. He did not look down. He did not shake. He walked as if the hall belonged to him. Aliens whispered. Some laughed softly, others spat in anger. What is a human doing here? Another prisoner, nothing more. But some voices shook with unease. They had heard stories of humans before, stories that were not meant to be true. The princess stared at him, her body stiff, her lips parted. The moment her eyes fell on him, her breath stopped. She had seen him before, not in this hall, not in this time, but long ago. A memory, hidden deep, rushed back like a storm. She leaned toward her mother, her voice no louder than a whisper. "That's him, Mother," she said, trembling. The queen turned her head, her golden eyes narrowing. "What do you mean?" The princess did not blink. She did not look away. Her finger lifted slowly, pointing at the human who now stood before the throne. "That is him," she whispered again, her voice breaking. "The one from long ago." Silence fell like a heavy curtain. The whispers of the nobles died. The laughter vanished. Even the glowing lights in the hall seemed to dim. Every eye turned to the human. The great hall that was always full of noise, full of power, was now empty of sound. The guards pushed the human to his knees, but he refused to bend fully. His eyes looked straight ahead, calm and sharp. He seemed to know that all eyes were upon him. He seemed to know this moment had been waiting for him. The queen studied her daughter, then studied the human. She saw no fear in him, no weakness, but she also saw no hate. It was as if he stood outside their world, untouched by their rules, and that disturbed her more than anger or begging ever could. The nobles began to whisper again, though carefully. Why does the princess point at him? Does she know him? Impossible, he is only human. But the queen raised her hand, and again the hall was silent. The princess spoke once more, her voice clearer, stronger, though her body still shook. "I know him, Mother," she said. "I saw him once when I was a child in the smoke of war, when our city burned." Gasps moved through the hall. The nobles leaned closer, their eyes wide, their hearts tight with unease. The human said nothing. He only stood tall, his chains rattling softly as he moved his hands. There was something in his eyes, something that made even the proudest alien lord look away. It was not pride, not anger, not arrogance. It was something deeper, something dangerous. Calm, the queen's lips pressed into a thin line. Her daughter had never lied, never spoken with such fear and awe at the same time. She turned her golden gaze back to the human. If he truly was the figure from the princess's childhood, then this moment was greater than anyone had expected. The hall waited, the nobles waited, the guards waited, but the human remained silent. He let the silence grow heavy, pressing on every ear, until at last, in a voice steady and low, he spoke. "So it has come to this," he said. His words carried across the hall like a wave. Simple words, soft words, yet filled with something sharp. The silence did not break. It only grew heavier. The hall of the galaxy, the hall of power, was held by the calm voice of a single human, and for the first time in centuries, the nobles of the galaxy did not feel superior. They felt small, they felt uncertain, and they did not understand why. whispers of the past. The silence in the grand hall did not end. It lingered, heavy, like a storm waiting to break. The princess still pointed, her hand trembling. Her voice caught between fear and awe. "That is him, mother," she whispered again, though louder this time, and her words echoed in the crystal walls. The nobles stirred, uneasy. Some shifted in their seats, their armored shoulders clinking. Others leaned forward, whispering sharp words behind alien lips, but no one dared speak too loud. Because in their hearts they felt it. The moment was not ordinary. The Queen of the Solari kept her golden eyes fixed on the human. She wanted to dismiss her daughter's words, call them childish memory. But something in the human's stillness stopped her. He was not like the other humans she had seen before, weak, broken, begging for mercy. He was different, and that difference burned like fire in the air. The princess took a deep breath, her voice shaking. "When I was a child, our world was under attack, our skies burned red with warships. The city was falling, soldiers were running, and I was lost in the fire. But through the smoke, through the shadows, I saw a figure." Her voice lowered, as if she feared the memory itself. "I saw him, a human, standing against the impossible." Gasps spread through the hall. The nobles exchanged glances, their whispers turning sharp. "That cannot be true," one hissed. "No human could stand against warships." Another growled. But doubt lingered in their eyes, for they too had heard fragments of such legends, legends the Empire had tried to bury. The Queen's lips tightened. She leaned closer to her daughter, her voice low and hard. "Be certain, child, for your words carry weight heavier than stone." The princess did not blink, her hand steady now. "I am certain, mother. I saw him then, and I see him now. This is the one." All eyes returned to the human. He stood without speaking, the chains glinting in the crystal light. His face gave nothing, no denial, no confession, only his calm stare, which cut deeper than any blade. The nobles could not hold their silence any longer. They rose to their feet, voices rising like a wave. "Impossible, he is only human. Kill him before he brings danger to us all. He should not breathe in this hall." But others were not so sure. Their whispers carried fear, not just hate. If he is the one, the warrior of the old stories, then he is dangerous. Dangerous to kill, dangerous to keep alive. The Queen lifted her hand, and the voices died again. Her gaze swept across the hall, silencing lords and generals who had ruled for centuries. Then she turned back. To the human, "Speak," she commanded. "Who are you?" For a long moment he did not answer. The silence returned, heavier than before. Then in a voice low and steady he replied, "You already know." The words struck like thunder, simple, but filled with a weight that shook even the proudest hearts. The princess lowered her eyes, her hands tightening together. She remembered the sound of battle, the sight of flames. She remembered a man standing against an army not with weapons of steel, but with something greater. Will, the Queen's jaw tightened, her golden crown catching the light. If it was true, if this human was the figure from her daughter's memory, then history had lied. The archives had been rewritten, the stories erased. But here he stood, living proof. The nobles whispered again, but now their voices trembled. What if it is him, the human who shattered a fleet? The one who fought like 1,000 warriors? Some sneered, trying to hide their fear, but the fear was there, crawling under their skin. The princess raised her chin, her voice stronger. "He is the one who saved me. When the enemy closed in, when the fire rained, he carried me through the chaos. No soldier of ours reached me, no knight of our blood, only him." The hall fell silent once more. Every noble, every guard, every eye stared at the human, but he did not move. He did not confirm, he did not deny. He let their fear grow, let their doubt deepen. The Queen studied him again. She saw the calm in his eyes, the calm of someone who had seen more wars than any general in her hall, the calm of someone who had nothing to prove, and that calm frightened her more than any weapon could. At last she leaned back, her voice echoing through the great hall. "Then let the truth be tested," she declared. "If this human is who you say, then his past will reveal itself. If he is not, then his silence will condemn him." The chains rattled as the guards tightened their grip, but the human only smiled, a faint shadow of a smile, as if he already knew the path ahead, as if the Queen's words were not a threat, but a step in a plan only he could see. And once again, the hall was filled not with sound, but with silence. A silence sharper than any blade. A silence that promised the galaxy was about to remember what it had tried so hard to forget. The human's calm. The chains rattled as the guards pushed the human forward. The sound echoed in the hall like broken thunder, sharp against the silence. Yet he did not stumble. He did not bow. He did not cry. He simply stood, his back straight, his eyes steady. Every noble in the hall waited for him to speak, to beg, to show fear. But the human gave them nothing. He let the silence breathe, let it spread. And the silence itself began to frighten them. The princess could not take her eyes off him. Her heart pounded with memory and fear. This was the same man she had seen in Smoke and Fire years ago, but how? He had not aged the way others did. It was as if time itself had refused to touch him. The Queen leaned forward, her golden crown shimmering. "Human," she said, her voice firm, "you stand accused of trespass, of defiance, of crimes against our empire. Do you deny this?" The human looked at her, his eyes sharp but calm, and he answered with only 4 words. "Do you fear me?" The question hit the hall like a blade. Gasps rose from every corner, nobles stiffened, guards gripped their spears tighter. It was not an answer. It was a challenge. And yet it was spoken so softly, so calmly, that it cut deeper than any scream. The Queen's lips pressed into a hard line. She wanted to say no. She wanted to show strength before her nobles. But in her chest, she felt the truth. A small shadow of fear had already taken root. The nobles erupted, their voices breaking the silence at last. "Arrogance!" One shouted. "Kill him now!" cried another. "He insults the Queen in her own hall." But beneath their anger was unease, because deep down even they could not answer his question. The princess whispered to herself, but the Queen heard her words. This is why he survived. This is why he stood when others fell. His calm is his weapon. The guards tried to push him again, to force him to his knees, but he resisted without struggle. Without force he did not fight. Yet they could not move him. It was as if the ground itself chose to hold him firm. Finally, the Queen raised her hand and silence returned. She looked at him with sharp eyes. "You are bold," she said. "Boldness does not save a man, not in this hall." The human tilted his head slightly, the faintest trace of a smile at the edge of his lips. "Then perhaps it saves a people," he replied. The words froze the hall again. Every noble felt the weight behind them. He spoke not as a man begging for his life, but as one who carried something greater, and that unsettled them more than any weapon could. The Queen narrowed her eyes. "What people? Yours? The humans? They are scattered, broken, nothing but dust across the stars." The human did not flinch, his eyes met hers, calm as ever. "Dust can still choke an empire," he said. The nobles gasped again. Some stood ready to shout, others sat frozen. They had ruled for centuries, crushed worlds, erased histories, Yet this chained human spoke as though empires meant nothing, as though he carried the future in his hands. The princess felt her breath catch. She remembered his voice in the fire years ago. Steady even as the world burned, he had carried her, through death itself, and even then his calm had never broken. Now she saw it again, unchanged. He was not just calm, he was unshakable. The Queen's anger rose, but so did her doubt. She wanted to strike him down, but something in her heart warned her. If she killed him now in this hall before all these eyes, it might not end the danger. It might begin it. The human shifted slightly, the chains rattling again. His voice was low, but every corner of the hall heard it. You think you hold me, but you cannot chain what you fear. The silence grew unbearable. The nobles could feel it, heavy on their shoulders. Some looked away, unable to meet his gaze. For in his eyes was not just calm. There was certainty, and certainty in a human was more dangerous than armies. The queen clenched her fists. You will not control this hall with silence, she declared. But her voice wavered, just enough for the princess to hear. And the princess realized the truth. Her mother was already controlled, not by chains, not by weapons, but by the human's unshaken will. The human said no more. He did not need to. The hall belonged to him now, not by right, not by crown, but by presence. And the galaxy would remember this silence, for in that silence, a single human had shaken an empire. The hidden truth, the grand hall trembled with silence once more. The human stood unmoved, his chains heavy but his spirit light. The queen's jaw tightened, her golden crown catching the fire of the crystal lights. She wanted to speak, but before she could, her daughter rose. The princess stood tall, though her hands trembled. Her voice rang out, clear but heavy with memory. You ask who he is, mother, I will tell you. Every noble turned their eyes to her, some sneered, others leaned forward with interest. The princess was not known for lies, and her words carried weight. She took a deep breath. When I was a child, our city burned. The skies filled with enemy ships, the ground shook with fire. I was lost, alone in the smoke. Soldiers fell, guardians fled, and I thought death had come for me. The hall listened in stillness. No one dared interrupt. Her words painted the air with fire and shadow, and every noble felt the weight of her memory. But then, she continued, her voice shaking yet strong, I saw him, a human, standing where no one else stood. The enemy came like a storm, and yet he faced them, not with fear, but with calm. Gasps moved through the hall. Some nobles hissed in disbelief. Impossible, one muttered. No human could stand against such power. But their voices were weak, filled with doubt. The princess lifted her hand, pointing at the chained man. It was him. I saw his eyes. I heard his voice. He carried me through the fire. He saved me when no one else could. The human remained still, silent. He did not confirm her words. He did not deny them. And that silence only made her story heavier. For if it was false, why would he not reject it? The queen's gaze darkened. Her golden eyes moved from her daughter to the human. If what the princess said was true, then history itself had lied. The archives of the empire had erased such moments. The records claimed no human had ever done such deeds. And yet here stood one living, breathing, unbroken. Whispers rose among the nobles, sharper now. The old legends, one voice murmured. Stories of a human warrior, a phantom of the wars. They said he destroyed fleets with only mind and will. Another noble shook his head, though his voice cracked. They were myths, lies told by slaves. They cannot be true. But deep inside they all felt the same unease. For the princess's words matched the whispers they had long buried, and the human's calm presence made the legends breathe again. The queen leaned closer to her daughter. Her voice low. Do you understand what you claim? If this is true, then he is not just a man, he is a threat to the empire itself. The princess lifted her chin. Her eyes shone with fear, but also with truth. He is not a threat, mother. He is the reason I am alive. He is the reason we are alive. The words struck like lightning. The hall shook with whispers once more. Could it be true? Could a single human have changed the course of a war without their knowledge? The queen turned back to the human, her voice sharp. Speak. Tell us if these words are true. The human's eyes met hers, steady, cold, calm. He spoke at last, his voice low. Truth does not need my tongue. It lives in memory, it lives in fear, and it lives in silence. A shiver moved through the nobles. His words were not an answer, yet they cut deeper than a confession. The princess bowed her head, whispering almost to herself. This is why. I never forgot. This is why his face haunted my dreams. Because he was not just a man, he was a storm wrapped in silence. The queen's hand tightened on her throne. For the first time, she felt the weight of doubt pressing against her crown. The empire she ruled had erased the past, rewritten the truth. But here, in chains, stood the very proof they had tried to bury. The nobles argued louder now. Kill him before he spreads lies. Silence him before the people learn. But some voices trembled with fear. What if he is the weapon we need? What if he is not our enemy, but our last hope? The queen raised her hand again. The voices died, but the fear did not. Her eyes burned into the human's calm face, and for the first time, she felt that perhaps she was not the judge in this hall. Perhaps she was the judged. The human lowered, his head slightly, not in defeat but in patience, as if waiting, as if everything that was happening was exactly as it should. His silence screamed louder than the nobles, and the queen understood. This was not the end of the story. This was only the beginning. The queen's dilemma. The grand hall was no longer calm, the nobles shouted, their voices sharp like blades. Some called for death, others called for silence. The air trembled with fear disguised as anger. The queen sat tall on her throne, but inside her chest a storm grew. Her crown felt heavy, heavier than ever before. She looked at her daughter, at the human, at the nobles, and for the first time she did not know which path was right. One noble stepped forward, his armor flashing, his voice harsh. "Your Majesty, end this farce. He is only human, a worm who dares to breathe in this sacred hall. Kill him now and end the whispers." Another voice rose from across the hall, older, deeper, trembling with hidden fear. "No, Majesty, if the princess speaks truth, then this is no ordinary man. This is the shadow from the old, Wars, the warrior who bent fate itself. If he lives, perhaps he is weapon. If he dies, perhaps he is curse." The queen's eyes burned as she silenced them with a single lift of her hand. Her golden gaze turned to her daughter. "Child, do you understand what you ask? You defend a human against your own blood, against your empire." "Why?" The princess stepped forward, her voice trembling yet strong. "Because I owe him my life, mother. Because I owe him our people's survival. When all else failed, he stood. When all else fled, he remained. And if he is the one I remember, then killing him now would not only be murder, it would be folly." The nobles hissed, their pride wounded. "To defend a human against your crown," one shouted. "She has been touched by madness," cried another. But the princess did not lower her head. She looked at her mother with fire in her eyes. "This is no madness. This is truth." The queen turned her eyes to the human. He had not moved, had not spoken. He stood as though carved from stone, his silence louder than the shouting nobles. Her voice came sharp. "Human, you hear these words? My nobles call for your blood. My daughter calls for your life. Tell me, why should I let you live?" The human raised his head slowly. His eyes met hers, calm, steady, unbroken. And when he spoke, his words shook the hall. "You should not." Gasps erupted across the chamber. Even the princess flinched, her heart twisting. The queen narrowed, her eyes anger and confusion burning together. "Then why do you stand? Why do you face us without fear?" The human's voice was soft but sharp as steel. "Because your judgment does not bind me. Because death is not my enemy. And because the one you fear is not me. It is what comes after me." The queen's breath caught, her heart tightened. "What comes after you?" The noble shouted again, anger mixed with panic. "Lies! Tricks! He speaks riddles to buy his life." But their voices were weaker now. Weaker because doubt had already rooted in their hearts. The princess stepped closer, her voice urgent. "Mother, listen. He speaks not for himself. He speaks of something greater, something that even we do not see." The queen clenched her fists. Her mind tore between reason and fear. If she killed him now, the hall would cheer. Her power would seem secure. But deep inside, she knew that power built on denial would crack like glass. If she spared him, the nobles would rage, but her daughter's words, her memories, and the human's calm, they would not let her heart rest. She stood, her golden robes flowing like fire, her voice thundering. "This hall is mine, this throne is mine, and this decision is mine. You speak of legends, of fire, of storms, but I speak of rule, and I will not let whispers break my crown." The nobles cheered at her words, their pride swelling. But in her chest, the queen felt no triumph, only weight. Her eyes met the human's once more, and in his calm stare, she saw not defeat, she saw patience, as if he already knew her choice, as if he had seen this moment before it came. The princess dropped to her knees, her voice rising above the crowd. "Mother, if you kill him now, you will kill more than a man. You will kill the truth itself, and when the storm comes, you will face it blind." The queen's heart shook at her daughter's words. The storm, yes, she could feel it too, deep beneath the silence. Something greater was moving, unseen but certain. And the human, chained, silent, unbroken, stood not as prisoner, but as herald. The queen closed her eyes. For the first time in her reign, she did not know if she was ruler or pawn. The dilemma crushed her crown, and the silence returned, heavy, endless. A silence that promised the next choice would change the galaxy itself. The human's revelation. The queen stood tall, but her heart wavered. The nobles shouted over each other, their anger hiding their fear. The princess knelt, her voice still begging her mother to listen, but the man in chains, the human, remained still, his silence louder than all their cries. At last, he lifted his head, his calm eyes scanning the hall. When he spoke, his voice was soft, but it carried to every corner. "You argue about my life," he said, "yet you do not see that your lives are already in danger." The nobles fell quiet, their shouts dying into whispers. The queen narrowed her eyes, her voice sharp. "What danger? Speak plainly, human." He looked at her, steady and unbroken. "You fear me, but I am not what you should fear, beyond your fleets, beyond your borders. Something stirs, an old enemy, one you thought was gone, but it was only waiting." A chill spread through the hall. The nobles shifted, some sneered, others listened with wide eyes. The queen's crown seemed heavier. "What enemy?" she demanded. "Our empire has crushed all who opposed us. There is none left who can threaten us." The human's lips curved in the faintest shadow of a smile. "Is that what you believe? Then you have already lost." Gasps rippled through. The nobles, one of them shouted, "Lies, he speaks poison to weaken us." But another voice whispered, trembling, "Wait, I have heard rumors, whispers from the edge of the stars, ships vanishing, colonies gone silent." The princess's eyes widened. She turned to her mother. "Mother, I have heard them too. Reports buried by the council, entire fleets lost, without trace." The queen's jaw tightened. Her silence was answer enough. She had heard the whispers. She had buried the reports. But now the words of a chained human made those whispers roar. The man's voice grew stronger. "They are not whispers. They are warnings. The ones who come do not conquer. They erase. They do not take slaves. They leave nothing. They are the true end of empires." The hall shook with unease. Even the proudest nobles now felt the cold in their bones. The queen's voice cracked like fire. "What proof do you have?" The human raised his chained hands, slightly. "Proof? You ask for proof as if truth bends to your will. But proof already bleeds across your borders. You hide it, you bury it. But soon it will bury you." The nobles roared in anger. Lies, tricks. But their voices lacked strength because deep in their hearts they knew they had heard the same whispers. And now the human's words made those whispers real. The princess stood again, her eyes burning with both fear and faith. "He is telling the truth," she said. "I know it. I feel it. He does not speak to save himself, he speaks to save us." The queen's hand tightened on her throne. Her pride demanded she reject the human's words, but her heart remembered the buried reports, the colonies gone silent. Her crown weighed, heavy with doubt. The human stepped forward as far as his chains allowed, and though bound he seemed taller than all the nobles. His voice deepened, sharp as thunder. "You call me enemy, but I have faced the true enemy. I have seen their shadows devour worlds. I have fought where no empire dares go, And I tell you this, if you kill me now, you will not kill a man, you will kill your only chance. The hall erupted. Some nobles shouted to kill him before his words spread further. Others trembled in silence, unable to deny the dread his words awakened. The queen leaned forward, her voice a mix of anger and fear. Why us? Why now? If what you say is true, why would you warn the very empire that enslaved your kind? The human's eyes flashed. His calm never broke, but there was fire beneath it now. Because I do not fight for empires, I fight for survival. And even your empire, proud and cruel as it is, will burn the same as all the rest, unless it learns fear, unless it learns unity. The words crashed against the hall like waves. Even the queen was silent, for she saw in his eyes not lies, not tricks, but the weight of someone who had truly seen what others refused to believe. The princess whispered, her voice trembling. Mother, if he is right, then everything we built, everything we are, will end. The queen looked down at her daughter, then at the nobles trembling in pride and fear, then at the human, standing unbroken in chains. Her voice was low, almost to herself. If he is right, then my choice is not his life. It is our future. The hall fell silent again. But it was not the silence of control. It was the silence of fear, the silence of a storm about to break. And in the center, the human stood calm, as if he had waited all his life for this moment, as if the galaxy itself was finally catching up to him. The silence before the storm. The queen's golden crown felt heavier than the throne itself. The human's words still rang in the air, sharp and unshakable. Around her, nobles whispered, shouted, argued. But none could hide the fear burning. In their eyes, even the proudest lords looked smaller than before. The princess stood close to her mother, her voice trembling but certain. Mother, you know it is true. You felt the same storm that I feel now. You buried the whispers, but you cannot bury the truth. The queen closed her eyes. Yes, she had heard them. Reports of fleets vanishing, colonies gone silent, stars darkening. She had told herself it was chance, rebellion, error, but deep in her chest she had known, and now the human had ripped the lie apart. The nobles demanded answers. Kill him before he spreads poison. Use him as a weapon. No, chain him deeper. Bury him beneath the throne. Their voices crashed like waves, but they all feared the same thing. What? If his words were not warning but reality? The queen rose slowly, her voice cut through the chaos like fire. Enough. The nobles froze, their arguments dying in their throats. Even the floating lights above the hall flickered as if listening. She turned her golden eyes upon the human. If what you say is true, then prove it. Show us this storm you speak of. The human tilted his head slightly, and for the first time a shadow of sorrow touched his calm face. I do not need to show you, for it is already here. The words sank into the hall like stone into water. A ripple of dread spread through every noble. The princess's breath caught in her throat. What do you mean? Already here? Then it came, a deep, distant vibration, so faint at first it could have been imagination, but it grew, steady, unyielding. The crystal floor trembled beneath their feet. The banners above swayed as though caught in unseen wind. The nobles froze, their eyes wide. What is this? An attack? Impossible. No fleet can breach our core. The queen's heart pounded. She looked toward the great doors of the hall. For a moment, she expected soldiers, rebels, assassins, but the vibration was not footsteps, not weapons. It was something larger, deeper, older. The human lifted his chained hand slightly, his eyes calm, unbroken. They have found you, he said. They were always coming, and now they are here. Suddenly, the crystal walls flickered with alarms. The great hall glowed red, symbols flashing across the air. Messengers stumbled in, their voices panicked. Your Majesty, the outer fleets, they are gone. Ships erased without a trace, entire. Squadrons, silent. Gasps shattered the nobles. Some cried out in denial. Others fell back into their seats, trembling. The queen's lips parted, her golden voice unsteady for the first time in her reign. "No, that is not possible." But the human's calm voice cut through her denial. It was never impossible, it was only inevitable. The princess grabbed her mother's arm, her eyes wide with fear. "Mother, listen to him. We must act. We must prepare. He is the only one who has faced them before." The queen looked into her daughter's eyes, then back at the human, and for the first time she saw him not as prisoner, not as enemy, but as the only being in the hall who was not afraid. The nobles shouted again, desperate, broken. "Arm the fleets. Kill the human before he betrays us. Save us, Majesty. Save us!" Their pride had shattered into panic, but the human stood tall, his chains glinting, his calm sharper than any blade. He lifted his head, his voice low but strong. "The storm has come. Your choice is no longer my life or death. Your choice is whether you will stand or be erased." The hall fell silent once more, but it was not the silence of order. It was the silence of fear, the silence before a war greater than any they had ever known. The queen's breath shook. Her crown burned like fire upon her head. The princess whispered, her eyes never leaving the human. "It begins now." And the human's calm eyes looked past them all, as though he could already see the shadows rising beyond the stars, as though he had seen this ending long before. It began.